How do cops tell the guilty people apart from the ones who are just nervous? I knew a police helicopter pilot and I asked a similar question when searching for suspects. He said that the bad guys were the ones not looking up at the helicopter. Innocent people point, look, and stare. I thought it was funny, but true to a point. I was taking the bins out one dark night and there was a police helicopter nearby. All of a sudden, they lit me up with the spotlight. I was like a deer in the headlights, and after a second or two, slowly waved at them, and then after a few more seconds, the spotlight moved on elsewhere. It was so awkward, they must have been peeing themselves laughing. Pulled over for being lost in the wrong neighborhood. Was relieved as I didn't have GPS at the time and was horribly lost. I'd been hoping that the cop who'd been tailing me for the last mile would pull me over to get directions. They wanted to know why a white boy like me was in a neighborhood like this. I explained that I'm lost. Doesn't believe me. Says I'm here for substances. My whole attitude changed because I was suddenly nervous. Why would he think that? And realizing that this could go badly. He says only guilty people act nervous. He ends up calling a K9 unit to search my car. The other cop is really cool. We chat and he apologized for the first cop being a jerk. After search, he gives me directions on how to get to my destination. Good cop, bad cop is real. I got pulled over for speeding on Canada Day, on my way up to Ottawa from Toronto. Did the usual routine of pulling over somewhere safe, taking the registration out and putting both hands on the wheel at 10 and 2. The cop approaches and I ask if it's okay for me to reach over and turn down the music, which I forgot to do. He starts laughing and says okay. He tells me to put my hands down since I'm making him nervous. I'm like, you're making me nervous. Back in Toronto, I don't take chances, and the cops are usually appreciative. But they've never told me to relax. It's best to err on the side of caution with Toronto police. But out of the city, cops are usually pretty laid back. We had a good old Canadian laugh, wished each other a happy Canada Day, and then he gave me a ticket for 115 in a 100. The funny thing is, I'm an off-duty cop, and around a uniformed officer I don't know, different department or area, I get nervous. Hell, my heart sometimes skips a beat when I see one of our own cars driving down the road, even though it might be the exact same vehicle I was assigned to just a few hours ago. My point is, I think pretty much everyone gets nervous around cops. Most people will avoid you and not make eye contact. But what really stands out for me are the adults that will periodically look at you, or you feel them staring at you like they're trying to ID your face. I've had to arrest a lot of people over the years, and many of them are back out on the streets. Perhaps as a cop, he's aware of how poorly things can go. I don't think literally everyone gets nervous around cops. The narrator has never had that healthy fear. Maybe one day when I'm wrongfully victimized, that will change. UK police officer here. There's no single factor, but there's a few things I'd look out for. Police aware is an expression we use. Like the last guy said, most people feel guilty and try to act normal around the police, which normally means pretending we're not there. You can begin to concentrate on eating that sandwich to an almost comic extent while sneaking the odd look to see what the copper's doing. Then you have the people who stop what they're doing and watch you intensely to see if you're coming for them. These are the people who are police aware. Of course, sometimes they're just tourists hoping to take a sneaky photo of a British copper. Mostly it's people whose appearance or manner doesn't fit in. For example, if you go to a busy taxi rank at a rush hour and then just casually mooch about rather than queuing or leaving, then that's an odd thing to do. If you walk into an expensive shop wearing tatty clothes and with ingrained dirt on your hands, then that's an odd thing to do. If you walk into a bar, order a drink, then leave it on the counter, then that's odd as well. And probably means you're either passing counterfeit money or pickpocketing. None of these things is illegal, but they're all things that are not entirely normal and would attract the eyes of an observant police officer. Don't misinterpret these examples as looking scruffy. That's not what I mean at all. It's about not fitting in because of your context, not just a sudden bout of, "I'm normal," from someone who clearly has a reason to be where they are. Visible signs of substance use. Sometimes in the UK you'll hear the term smack diet, but the same would be true for crystal in the US. You can spot addicts from a mile away because they have the same look and behaviors. Without wishing to tar all addicts with the same brush, hard substance addiction and acquisitive crime often go hand in hand. So when I see someone who's clearly an addict, I'm immediately interested in them. Lastly, there's intelligence. A lot of what we do is guided by specific knowledge about an area. In some areas, I'll be looking out for teenage kids hanging around bike racks. In others, I'll be looking out for substance addicts meeting dealers. In others, I'll still be looking for bag thieves amongst drinkers. Anyone who matches the sort of person who I'm on the lookout for, who also gets jumpy, is going to pique my interest. But normal people, less so. Sorry it's such a rambling answer, the truth is there are many factors and it just depends. A good friend of mine works as a lawyer for one of the bigger insurer companies in defense. A good percentage of accidents happen because people freak out about the mere presence of the cop and don't focus on the actual driving. Like literally during a deposition, I didn't see them pull out, there was a cop on the same road. In medicine, we have a similar phenomenon called white coat hypertension. Being in the mere presence of a doctor raises patients' blood pressure. So a patient may have a normal blood pressure, but every time they step into the office to get it checked, it goes up. Going to the doctor can be bad for your health sometimes. I'm one of these jumpy people. I've been pulled over and screamed at, "Why are you so nervous? What are you hiding?" And another time, the cop was very nice and just said, "Relax, it's just a ticket. Are you okay? Do you want to catch your breath? It's not a big deal. Take a couple of deep breaths, buddy." Super friendly and helps me relax. I get anxiety in those situations without any real cause. I just get really nervous. It's crazy how differently cops can handle the situation in the exact same circumstances. Just one was nicer, or trained better. I've only had one bad instance with a cop who was convinced I was up to no good. He asked me what I was doing, and I told him. He asked me why I took a specific exit before my destination, and I mentioned I needed gas. He said, "Well, you've got an answer for everything, don't you?" Yes, sir, it's not that difficult when it's the truth. He ended up having me wait outside the car for half an hour while he went over it with a canine unit after I refused to let him search. I didn't want to have to reorganize everything after he rummaged through it. I had nothing to hide. Then when the dog found nothing, he searched the car anyway because I seemed nervous because I was sweating, after standing in the Texas sun in August for 30 minutes. I filed a complaint and was pretty much told, "Too bad, our officers are risking our lives for you every day, and people shouldn't be questioning their authority." Cop here. Assuming this is on a traffic stop, for the most part, if you're acting jumpy, I try to figure out why and remove that stress. If I can't figure it out on my own, I'll simply ask. Common answers are, I don't like cops, I don't want a ticket, and so on. My reasoning for this is if you're relaxed and I ask if there are any weapons in the car and your stress indicators skyrocket when you say no, something's wrong. If you're already stressed, I won't be able to see that reaction. As others have stated, it's not 100%, some people are just nervous Nellies. I try to calm people down for their sanity and my safety, but it doesn't always work. I have anxiety. Every time a copper pulls me over, I look guilty. But really, I'm scared of unwarranted police violence and nervous about how much money today's ticket will cost me. Police always notice and they always say that makes me suspicious, so they have reason to ask to search me and my possessions. I feel like I can't be the only innocent person in the world who gets the jumps around police, but they always act like I'm the first person they've ever encountered who acts guilty when I haven't actually done anything. Every time I get pulled over, as soon as my tag is run through the system, the police get on their bullhorn and tell me to get out and lay on the ground. Not because I'm black, because I'm a two-time convicted felon, been crime-free for 6 years. But I always find it amusing, and after all the foolishness, I always have a laugh with them. Duval, Florida, by the way. Well, your attitude to it is bafflingly positive. I can't imagine many people would react that positively to what you make sound like a semi-regular public spectacle of yourself. Police instructor here. You look for what is out of place or context. Everyone is looking at an event or certain direction, and that one person is staring at you or in the complete opposite direction. That's the oddball. People draw attention to themselves by behavior that is different from the environment, or expected of the environment they're in. It's how they identified the Boston bombers. Everyone was looking in the direction of the explosion, but the brothers were staring in the opposite direction. Suspicious behavior. This technique can be applied to clothing as well. If it's summer and you see people wearing heavy jackets, there's something odd. Somebody keeps tapping the waistline and there's no reason for him to do that, like something falling off it, and there's something tucked into their waistline, like substances or weapons. Now, not saying this gives you an excuse to go up and start frisking people, however, it definitely lets you narrow down the focus of your attention for what is out of place. Cops once woke me up at 3 a.m. in the morning because my neighbor saw flashlights in the woods next to my house. Then they started questioning me, asking why I seemed so nervous, and if I wasn't doing anything, why were there footprints in the snow in front of my fricking front door? I was a 19-year-old living on my own in a small town, so small it didn't have a population. I just remember being absolutely flabbergasted at why they'd want to know why someone might be nervous from getting a visit from the cops in the middle of the night, and why they thought footprints in a heavily traveled area was suspicious. I basically told them some variation of that and then told them they were welcome to look around outside if they wanted before they left. This was during deer hunting season in Wisconsin, so the only thing I could think of is that maybe they thought there was some poaching going on. Still, it showed a remarkable detachment from reality that they couldn't understand why I was so nervous to begin with. I had a similar incident. Dead asleep, woken up by police pounding on the door. This is before cell phones, so naturally, my now ex-husband and I woke up and ran downstairs. Cue the police shining a light in our faces, and the first thing they said was, "Oh, let me guess, you just woke up. How convenient." So the ex and I were like, yeah, we did. What's going on? The cop says our car was involved in a hit and run of several cars. A friend of ours was staying over a few nights. We motioned behind us to the couch where he was sleeping to the cops, who come in. Dude is in his shoes and yet he's sweating. So, yeah. Thanks for assuming, dudes. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. Actual police officer here, there really is no magic answer. There's a ton of overlap between both groups, and anyone who says they can consistently spot the difference is lying to you. I'd rather judge the situation based on the objective facts rather than my gut feeling. Not long after I got my license, I was driving around and at a stoplight there was a cop behind me. I hadn't done anything wrong. Cops at that point didn't freak me out yet, and I even knew a kid in school who was planning to become one. The lights turn green and I go. I notice behind me everyone is behind the cop on all lanes. It weirded me out. Usually, there are cars passing me or next to me. People were giving the cop a nice wide berth or at least not wanting to drive ahead of it. It made me feel paranoid and I checked my speed. I was actually going slower than the speed limit. After I figured out everyone was just being paranoid, I sped up to the speed limit, and that was that. The cop was driving slower than the speed limit, and I drove off, leaving them all behind. I feel like the cop probably thought it was hilarious that his presence was slowing down traffic, because it wasn't like he was trying to control it, his lights weren't on. Since then, I've had plenty of speeding tickets. Plenty. But not on that day. Cops freak me out now too. Every time I see one, I go, oh crap, speed limit? I'm okay. Car functioning right? Yes. Substances in the car? Wait, no, don't do substances. It's a tense situation. Not a cop, but having worked in a pawn shop, I'll say they talk way too much. When the customer was trying to pull something on us, most would talk a lot about nothing, keep up a constant stream of chatter. Of course, this is in no way a 100% indicator, but it was one sign we looked for. Liars will usually offer additional explanations and excuses for something even when you don't ask, mostly because they assume you'll doubt what they'll say and feel the need to back up their claims. Just imagine that a friend is late and he says, "Oh, sorry, I forgot," and move on. That's probably true because he didn't even consider for a moment you might doubt that. That same friend shows up late but then starts explaining in detail why they're late and add more and more details to that story even though you didn't ask. They might be making crap up and trying to present a more finite, flawless story. And of course, this only applies to bad liars. Duh, of course. Tips for spotting obvious liars only apply to people who didn't perfect the art. Not a cop, but I'm a Florida native and am usually dressed in shorts and a t-shirt. I was in a flyover state for a concert and was supposed to pick someone up about 4 hours away in the morning. Instead of getting a hotel for 5 hours, I decided to drive to my destination and sleep in the back of the rental car. Usually when I do this, I roll the windows down and sleep with the car off. But it was in the mid-30s this night. I pull into the vacant parking lot next to a vacant building outside of town. Turns out I was still in city limits. I tried to turn the lights off but wasn't able to. This eventually attracted the attention of the local law enforcement. I woke to a flashlight banging on my window. They, all 9 of them, wanted me out of the car while they tried to figure out what was going on. Being as it was cold, I started to shake. I shared how I thought it was amusing that I was shaking and that it would likely raise suspicion. The cop that was babysitting me at that moment said, "No, it's cold out." She then let me get into the car and started again. 9 out of 10 would recommend. I got pulled over for a DUI stop at 2:30 in the morning in the middle of March. I was just leaving work, so I didn't really have a proper attire to be standing outside for long periods of time. I'd not been drinking and showed no evidence of it at all. I got pulled over for swerving when I went to reach for my water bottle that fell on the floor, but the cop proceeded to keep me outside of my car, doing all of the sobriety tests for about an hour while I was shivering and my teeth were chattering. It was close to 3:30 when he finally realized I wasn't impaired. 0 out of 10 would not recommend. Thank you both for your respective ratings. They were very helpful in working out whether you did or did not enjoy your respective inconveniences. 8 out of 10 would read again. There's a bit in Bryan Cranston's book where he talks about his time as a security guard. His talent was spotting about-to-be shoplifters. His advice? People come into stores because they want something specific. In and out. Watch for the lingerers. Must be rough around Christmas time. Sorry, security guards, I have no clue what to get my mom. UK veteran and ex-Metropolitan Police, here, just found it's all down to experience when reading people. Your mentor is everything and should be a wealth of knowledge. Learn from them. Also, the weirdos tend to be regulars and someone will know them and tell you all you need to know. The regulars will be in an intel database somewhere, so any safety issues should be made aware of for you to control. This includes known aliases. I don't put much consideration on someone's nervousness to the likeliness of them committing a crime. We need reasons or probable cause to determine that. However, someone's jumpiness is a tactical cue to me that they may more likely run or fight, especially if I already have probable cause of a crime occurring. Most people are more scared when stopped by the police, but this fear is different than jumpiness. Fear is a little more subdued than the tension of someone looking for an escape. Another consideration is that if someone suffers from a mental illness, their symptoms are usually clearly different than someone who is plain scared or jumpy. Also, someone who is affected by substances clearly has distinct signs. It's pretty complicated to explain, but simple when observing it in person every day. Ex-cop, still licensed if that matters. You can't always tell. That's why treating everyone as close to the same as possible is important. The average person will change their behavior around a police officer at least a little bit. It can be weird, over-respectful type deal, or they might shut down completely. The average criminal acts nearly the same. However, that's why it's important to be very aware of the person's movements and responses to questions or your own movements. If you ask a person with substances in the car, "Do you have substances in the car?" his eyes will very commonly dart toward where he or she is hiding something, even if it's not substances. That of course doesn't give me probable cause to tear their car apart looking for stuff, it's just a red flag. A person who is simply nervous and is not really guilty of a crime will most likely just break eye contact and look somewhere else, such as out of the window, behind you, down at the wheel, among a few other places. Same goes for a person you may simply be suspicious of on the street. Are you carrying any weapons? Will lead to a person carrying a weapon to often touch the area where it is, usually repeatedly, or start to look at where they have hidden a weapon. A person who's just nervous probably won't grab their waistband several times after that question. That is just one example, but it shows the importance of communication. Being aware of the surroundings and subject, and why asking questions is very important. All because a person who's simply nervous and a criminal who is nervous are almost indistinguishable without some digging. As for people who appear totally 100% calm, well, that in and of itself can be a red flag as well. Maybe he or she is calm because they like police. Maybe they are police in a different area. Maybe they really have nothing to hide and a good understanding of police procedures. Or they're a hardened criminal that has no sense of remorse or anxiety over meeting a cop. You never know unless you start to look deeper. So to anyone who feels like cops hate you or are mean, maybe that sheds a bit of light on things. I'm a cop in Arizona. It's important to know the cultural and societal norms of your patrol area. A huge amount of folks are packing heat here, for example. Your average law-abiding citizen will generally use a holster and not be deceptive about the weapon. Bad guys will not be forthcoming. We have some issues with Mexican cartels and they tend to blend in somewhat, but have weapons in unique calibers, such as .38 Supers. Since we do have a huge Hispanic community, it helps to know the norms of their behavior, which differ somewhat from the white community. A vast majority of the time we'll be dealing with people while investigating specific crimes. There's a huge variety of factors involved in that, but generally speaking, you're going to use 4 of your senses to make educated guesses. Sight, smell, touch, and sound. A person whose voice wavers may just be afraid of cops. Combine that with an odor of substances, or a suspicious protrusion on their body, then there could be an issue. White cultural knowledge is important. There are some universal signs of deception, which you could probably recognize. I spent a year in Afghanistan doing police work as well, and those principles held true there too. To a degree, it's profiling, which is a dirty word but a pragmatic principle. I never feel I act normal around cops. Funny thing is, I have 2 close relatives who are cops. When I act normal around them, they tell me I should respect that they're cops. Sorry, does this illegal activity that we're both participating in bother you all of a sudden? I got a family member who's been a cop since the 80s, basically the Stone Age. He gets nervous when the cops are behind him. Cops can't even tell if they're in the right house. Smart people rarely become cops. In fact, I've known people who failed the entrance tests for getting too high a score. You shoot them all and let God sort them out. Seriously though, my uncle is a sheriff and he said one of the biggest giveaways is people who try to be subtle, but their actions are completely different from someone who has nothing to hide. For example, if they're busting up a party, an underage drinker will nearly immediately set their drink down and push it away about 6 inches after they set it down. The pushing away isn't something you normally do. Everyone is different, but usually the nervous people will be polite and apologetic. Suspicious people will be more agitated and annoyed. Young black man here, I was approached by an officer at a bus stop because of my suspicious behavior. Among 7 other people, I was the only black. I was nervous looking at my watch and in the direction of the bus that I wanted to come through because I was late for work, which was the direction where the cop came from. By the looks of it, probably thought that I was nervous because of his presence. The cop got jumpy, hand on his holster, and forced me to show my ID and backpack for suspicious or things that would compromise me. Didn't even bother to see that the other commuters were talking about the late bus out loud. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.